So, Kim, I saw those econ college students with you in the lecture hall. What were you doing?
Oh, they came on a field trip to see how a real econ firm operates. I talked about a lot of things with them. We started with the four main econ goals, full employment, price stability, economic growth, and a viable balance of payments. We discussed how the first three goals are often conflicting, because, for example, economic growth means growth related to higher standards of living and higher incomes, and price stability means holding on to a low inflation rate.
Oh, that's interesting. It reminds me of the good old college days. I remember how we used to discuss the importance of a viable balance of payments and how cash flowing in and out should be balanced.
Yes, we discussed that too. We then went over the GDP equation. I think we got a bit confused when I tried to explain the relationship with the savings equation with it, but they'll get the hang of it.
Ah, yes, I remember. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus NX basically represents the total market value of all goods and services produced during a specific time period. Did you also tell them about how if net exports are positive, we have a trade surplus, and how if it was negative, we have a trade deficit?
Yes, I sure did. I see your econ isn't so rusty after all. Savings, if you remember, equal GDP minus taxes minus consumption plus taxes minus government expenditure.
Yes, that's right. And the first part of the equation, GDP minus T minus C, represents private savings, while the second part, T minus G, represents national savings.
That's true, and seeing as we work for the government, I told them how we, as a legislative body, try to increase the incentive to save by increasing taxes. When they asked me why, I told them that it could be done for many reasons, such as trying to decrease interest rates.
You remind me of '93 when Bill Clinton took office, remember? And interest rates in the USA were very high, due in large part to the huge federal government budget deficits that were irresponsibly run up during the 80s and early 90s. Government expenses were higher than the taxes received to fund them, which resulted in a foolish budget deficit.
Isn't it ironic how he was loved for raising taxes? It just goes to show you how much economics really influences a society. Raising taxes in order to raise the federal budget deficit had the effect of increasing the supply of savings. This brought us to the subject of loanable funds. We discussed how Clinton's tax increase set off an economic revival. As interest rates fell, business investment and consumer spending took off, and the stock and bond markets soared. The result was increases in jobs, wages, profits, and capital gains, leading in return to higher tax collections. The deficit continued to shrink. Government borrowing became a surplus by the later part of the 90s, and the supply of loanable funds continued to increase.
I remember those days. I wish they knew how much loanable funds in an economy affected tremendously.
Oh, you reminded me. We also discussed the different policy decisions that governments take. I told them about how one way to decrease inflation would be to use the monetary policy, in which interest rates are raised, resulting in a decrease in investment. We then discussed the fiscal policy, and how it's about changing government expenditure in order to decrease or increase GDP.
Did you tell them about how we and our fellow economists look forward to the regular reports of the amount of durable goods purchased in a period of time?
Yes, I did. We spoke about how durable goods were the strong economic indicators, as non-durable goods will be purchased no matter what.
I just wish that men were as simple as economics. I could just plot a graph showing where we could reach optimal production and work from there, instead of jumping up and down with him like a business cycle would.
Oh, tell me about it. We then went on to talk about the three different types of unemployment and how frictional unemployment was demanded by governments, how structural unemployment can be battled by simply training people to give them the skills that the economy currently demands, and how cyclical unemployment is the most important.
Did you demonstrate the effect of governmental policies and cyclical unemployment too?
Well, actually, one of the smarter students asked me if government policies could battle unemployment, and I said yes, as governments can, for example, use the monetary policy and decrease interest rates, thereby allowing firms to decrease employment costs. Another student asked me how they, as students, would be classified since they aren't currently contributing to the economy's wealth.
Which led you to explaining the concept of Naylor.
Exactly! I then started explaining what the term participation rate means in economics and how it varies pro-cyclically.
Well, I hope you spoke about inflation too. It's one of the most important economic indicators.
Yes, I actually did. I told them about how there were two types of inflation now. With demand-pull inflation, when we have too much demand, prices are pulled up. And how with cost-push inflation, when cost of materials goes up, prices go up by firms.
I hope you told them not to make the same mistake that most people make and forget to link their inflation rate to their salaries in order to maintain real income.
Oh, can you believe I made that mistake when I first started working? And I'm supposed to be an econ major too.
Well, as long as you learned from it.
I sure did. I told him about how cost-push inflation is worse because governments can't control it.
Oh, demand inflation is so easy to control with interest rates, and is actually wanted as it implies full employment. Did you tell them about how banks' nominal interest rates were some of the real interest rate plus the inflation premium?
Yep, they were really surprised. We then went on to talk about the aggregate expenditure model, which, helps us determine GDP. I explained to them the average propensity to consume and the average propensity to save, and more importantly, the marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. I asked them, what will you do if the government gives you $1 more? Will you save it, or will you consume it? I obviously received a variety of answers, but I think that my question made them think a lot.
What about financial markets? Did you talk about them?
I told them about how financial systems acted as movements from savers to borrowers. We spoke about the stock market and bond market and how the difference was that ownership of a share in a company is called equity financing, and ownership of a bond is called debt financing. We then spoke about junk bonds, how risky they were, and the increasing popularity of mutual funds.
You seem to have summarized almost all of the important econ principles for them. I'm surprised you didn't mention the monetary system, though.
I actually did. We talked about liquidity and how money is the most liquid asset. I told them about commodity money like gold and fiat money like the green-colored Mr. George Washington that we all love. I told them about how very important it was to know the amount of currency that people have or how much money is on hand, and to know the amount of demand deposits.
You also must have told them about how closely we work with the Fed.
Yep, they were surprised when I told them how the Fed could simply change interest rates by buying and selling bonds to shift the supply of money. We then discussed the importance of maintaining a good reserve ratio, as no one wants to have too little money in their banks in the case of someone wanting to make a huge withdrawal. Can you imagine they asked me how banks make profit? I told them interest rates led to the money multiplier, which is basically the amount of money the bank generates with every dollar of reserves.
Wow, you seem to have covered it all then.
Oh, but there's one more thing that I discussed with them and I haven't told you. We spoke about international trade and its important role in maintaining harmony between nations. I told them about how if specialization and trade occur, one can produce outside their production possibilities curve.
And of course, the classic comparative and absolute advantage. The producer that requires a smaller quantity of inputs to produce a good has the absolute advantage, and the producer that has a smaller opportunity cost of producing good should be the one to produce it.
It's like Econ 202 all over again.
Well, thanks to you, all this old nostalgia is rushing through my head.